Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. I'm your host, Thor Conklin, and today has been in the making for about, I don't know what, Steve, six months now?
I was thinking it's easily 6 months. We've tried a few times at this, and it looks like we may finally succeed.
This actually might work. So the first time was completely my fault. Something went wrong with the record. I don't know if I didn't hit record or I messed up. I don't know what happened. It probably recorded, and then I saw this thing that came up on my screen that says, "Do you want to save this?" And I said, no.
And I know the second time was entirely my fault.
Yeah, then you bailed on me.
It was a calendar foobar.
Yeah.
I deleted it somewhere along the way, and I got a bunch of texts in these notes that said, "Hey, are we doing this today?" And I said, "Today? What's today?"
It's today.
So,
and then he came down to Atlanta. We were going to get together for dinner. I don't know who was buying because who was the last one to bail on the guy. And then you got sick and you had to go back or something early.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. I'm glad I didn't get together with you because I did get sick on that trip, and I was useless for a few days following. So I would have been a horrible, horrible dinner date. And what's funny about the last 6 months, though, is in trying to get together, we've gotten to know each other just a little bit better, just in terms of just in passing and learning a little bit here and there. It's been a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, this is like our second date. The first date went awesome. We just had like
We had a great session.
Really
the recording would have been brilliant. It would have been absolutely brilliant. But we'll make a brilliant recording today. I'm certain of it.
I know we got to step up our game. I'm a little nervous. I'm just letting you know that we've got to make sure. Well, the audience sitting here going, "Who the hell is Steve?" So let me.
Hey, and are we going to talk about him, or what's the subject today?
Who is he? Why am I going to keep listening? Steve is the co-founder and CEO of Be Found Online, digital marketing agency, Inc. 5000 winner. How many Inc. 5000s have you won?
7 in a row. We grew pretty well for several years. We've had a very good run. I'm very proud of the company, the organization, everybody around us, and really I'm happy for our clients.
Well, after getting to know you better, I can see why that growth's been there. You guys really do a special thing there. I love your tagline. We think, we care, we deliver. And I think so often as business leaders, I see the first one never implement it. Think. It's like,
just do me a favor. Just stop and think for a moment, please.
Yeah, I remember a mentor telling me that the book Think and Grow Rich starts off with, let's think first.
Yeah.
And we get, as entrepreneurs, we get caught up into this system of it's like, go, go, go. Everything wants to be done faster. And something that you and I just started to talk about right before we got on air, we want to make sure that we jumped into it, is, presence. You've got to take a moment, step back, think, plan, and have the presence to be right there where you are there, not distracted on a gazillion different things. And I get the sense, I'm not a client of yours, but I get the sense that your clients understand that and that philosophy dives deep into your organization with your people.
It does, and we're trying to get it across the whole organization. So a good friend of mine, Anise Kavanaugh, wrote a book called Contagious Culture. And Anise has a framework she calls Intentional Energetic Presence, or IEP. And she says that you have to be ready to be in every room. So you forget about what led you to where you are. You have to worry about being in the room. It was a few months back. We were heading into a really important client meeting, and it was scattershot before that. And we found each other about 20 minutes before the meeting at a local Starbucks. And the team was talking about the presentation and who was going to be in the room. And I talked to the whole team. I stopped them for a minute. I said, folks, here's what I need you to do. Forget about what got us here. Let's go in there. Let's be amazing. Let's drive this thing home. Forget about who didn't do what, or we could have done more for the presentation or the reports and those things. What we have to do is we have to go in that room and we have to be present for the client. It's all hands on deck, and that means listening, and listening well to understand the client needs. Yes, there's going to be time to present, and each of us is going to have the microphone, but be present for the client. So check out on everything else that got us here and check into the client meeting, because for the next 2 hours, it's us and the client. Let's go win it.
I had the opportunity to interview someone, I guess last week or the week before, and we were talking about this very topic, and she was bringing up, stop making eye contact and start making eye connection.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Well, eye contact, making eye contact. You can make contact with someone and not be present. But when you make eye contact, it's a completely different feeling. Think about it. If you walked in and you just made eye contact with someone, great. Make eye connection where the two of you are actually sharing a moment in that point where your two eyes are connected. I was like, that's really powerful. That is.
I never thought of it like that, in such simple terms like that. That's really what you want, whether you're meeting somebody for the first time or you're renewing a relationship with a client or a partner that you've had for several years. That's incredible.
Yeah. Replace contact. Replace contact. Thank you. With connection. And she said, in everything that you do, make a connection, have connection, be there, be present.
Awesome.
Yeah. I thought that was great. You guys also won Best Places to Work.
Best Places to Work 2016. And if I can say it I can say we were trumped for the cover, because on the same day that Ad Age was coming out, Trump won the election and they slapped the Trump cover over ours. so that's a little bit of our claim to fame for winning the Ad Age #1. But yeah, we won Best Places to Work because it has to do with our culture, our mindfulness, the way we think about our people. And, I used to think that culture, values, and things of that nature were sort of the hippy dippy crap that the new kids were doing. And when I think about emotional intelligence now and the things that I'm learning, and I know all of this stuff that we're developing is nascent, right? Because businesses have been run in this command and control fashion for forever. And now we're starting to think that our businesses feel, and our people aren't just about money, but they want to connect with the business and they want to understand it. So culture and values and some of the mindfulness that goes with it, I think, is really what propelled us in Ad Age. And it makes us who we are. It's part of our DNA. I still remember the conversation in San Diego several years ago that started me on that journey down the cultural revolution, as I call it.
Emotional intelligence, so important. How do you hire for that?
It comes down to questions and thinking about cultural fit. And we don't have it right. And I think I'd have to talk to Dan Goleman to have him come in and do some interviewing around emotional intelligence for us to have a prescription for it. It's really finding out how people think on their feet and asking them key questions in those situations to see how they deal with it, and asking them how they've handled some of the most difficult situations in the past and how they thought about those things and how they've communicated. Because I think when we react instead of think, that's when it breaks down for all of us. And I was just telling a friend of mine who came in for the weekend, I said, I was born with a self-destruct button. I said, I have ruined more great opportunities just by pressing my own self-destruct button than I can even count. And in doing so, each one is a lesson, right? Because you've got to fail to succeed. And if you can start thinking about where you're going to end up and you can control that emotion and you control that management, you can get there. So I think in interviewing people for it, I don't know that there's a magic formula. Somebody probably has one. I don't have that formula. I'll be here to say that I don't do it. But what we try to do is we try to find that cultural fit. We try to ask some of those questions that get people thinking more about difficult situations, and not just how they respond in those different situations, but also using some words that people use in those tough conversations, and asking people, it's a little bit of a Rorschach test. Here are 10 words. Tell me what comes to mind when you see it. And based on their feedback from those 10 words, understanding their presence of mind when they're looking at those things and how they're going to respond in critical situations.
I like that. Whenever an organization has core values that they really feel, they're just not on the wall, but they really truly believe in them and they adhere to them, I always suggest to craft some interview questions around those core values. So let's say perseverance and pushing through and getting it done no matter what. craft some questions around that, 3 or 4 different questions that attack it from different angles, and throw up objections. Client says that this has to be done by 5 o'clock today, but your computer just blew up. What do you do? When they say, okay, I go ask my coworker for his computer, and then when the lights go out, the energy goes. Hopefully that will not happen with us today.
Not today. Hold on. knock on wood. Knock on wood.
But it's
so
true.
far so good. It still says recording.
So far so good. That's absolutely right.
And Kim Kardashian's nowhere nearby, right? We're not going to worry about breaking the internet.
I hope not. Maybe Dan Quayle might be here, but at least if it breaks, he can.
You can build us a new one.
And how can you not like a guy that favorite movie is Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
You gotta love it.
Yeah, that should be an interview question for the millennials. When's the last time you watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail? And what do you think was meant? Why did they ask, what is the average speed of an African swan?
No.
Yeah.
My kids are 18 and 16. I think that's a rite of passage movie now. I think they have to watch it.
Absolutely. Tell me what, and I'm going to ask this question. I know your first response is, who says that I'm a great CEO? I think you're a great CEO. So that solves it right there. What are your secrets? What makes you great?
I think, wow, that's a really interesting question. I haven't had it posed that way. In thinking about it, for me, it's the fact that I take the time to care and I take the time to listen. I think my people are the most important asset. There would be no BFO, certainly without a Steve and without my partner, Dan. But beyond that, the reason there's still a BFO is because of the wonderful humans that I get to work with every day. And it's giving them the benefit of the doubt and understanding situations. And in grad school, I had a professor, Dr. Palmer, who had this theory. It never became a book. He always wanted to, called multiple perspective problem solving. And the key was that you needed to see things from multiple perspectives. And if you only had one perspective, you needed to get out of your way long enough to see it from somebody else's. And I think going into a room, and I've challenged myself with that since, it's 20 years ago that I had Dr. Palmer. So since that day, making sure I can see and understand from different perspectives. I had a situation about 6 months ago I'll use as an example. So we had this kid working for us. He's a really, really bright guy. And I got wind sort of on the B side that he was having some trouble, and there was a client situation, and that maybe we had to remove him from an account, and there was going to be trouble on the horizon. And I could have gone to his superior. I could have gone to a couple other folks on the management team to find out what the story was. And it would have built, instead of building support for him, what that generally does, I found out, is that builds a groundswell of sort of people with pitchforks and axes, is they say, oh, well, he did that. Oh, my gosh. And it's all speculation. So instead, what you have to do is you just go to the source, and you just have to knock on his door and ask the question. And boy, was I surprised when he and I sat down to breakfast and I got his perspective on the 3 or 4 things that I had listed out, whether or not he delivered for the client and a couple of other things. His answers, he took responsibility for a couple things that he didn't get done, and then he gave me just fabulous dialogue and supporting information on the things that he did do that were not entirely contrary to the feedback I got, but showed me that he was in the right mind and he was doing what was best for the customer and for the company. And so instead of building this whole swell of negativity toward this kid, instead, I went back and I grabbed just 1 or 2 other people, and we sat in a room together. We said, folks, we're going to have the tough conversation together, and we're going to clear the air, because what we can't have is this indirect negativity affecting him, because it's an outside influence. And if he's has to manage the outside influences all the time, then he can't bring his best self to the situation. So we need to help him get to his best self. So myself and his boss at the time, we decided to do what we call scaffolding. We didn't want him to fall very far if he fell. We're going to make mistakes, but so what we wanted to do is, okay, you're going to fall. It's like that trust circle, right? We go out in the woods, we sing Kumbaya, and we fall on each other. It's but the idea is that we caught him. We didn't let him fall very far, but it was scary enough to fall when you messed up, but it wasn't a devastating fall. And we were able to help him grow significantly doing that. It's building that kind of support for people. And certainly there's got to be a limit to the sport, right? Because I can't have you stumbling and falling all the time. But if you're showing growth and you're climbing back up, then I'm more than happy to continue investing in you.
You know, that reminds me of a story. I always have the value of, I make this clear with my clients and have for the last 30, I think ever since I started in business. And that is, I'm always going to tell you the truth, even if you don't want to hear it, because I have a responsibility to understand it. And it doesn't always go over well. And
no.
One time, I'm working in New York. This is probably going back 25 years. And I was doing budgets for a client. I outlined the budgets, what I thought they would be the coming year. Client wasn't happy, spoke to my boss, wanted to make sure that, you know, he was in agreement with them. And he goes, look, before you say anything, I'm taking him off the account. And they said, you're doing what? He goes, I'm removing him from the account. Oh, no, you do not remove him. As a matter of fact, if you go to remove him from the account, you just lost the account. We're just telling you that we're not happy with what he had to say. Is what he had to say correct or not correct? And he goes, that was it. I said, look, I'll always tell you the truth. And if you're in a situation where I have to give you numbers that are going to be 8 months, 10 months into the future, I want to make sure when you go to the board that you don't look foolish and come up below budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to cost you.
No, I get it. There are a couple of basic tenets that I use with the team when I talk about client services. And I think it opens us up to sort of being honest and open with our clients. And one is do what you say you're going to do when you're going to say and do it. It's the idea that the client is expecting a yellow report Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Don't show up on Monday with a blue report and tell the client you thought you'd change it. If anything, you show up Tuesday with yellow and blue and show him the benefits of blue and then say, can we do the blue report going forward?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the basic rules. The other thing, and to your point, is that I tell people if we've got a punch in the face coming, go take it. You can't hide behind it. The client's going to find it anyway. And when you're honest with the client about performance or about anything that you screwed up, you got to get out there and take it. We had a $13,000 mishap on a client spend just a few weeks ago. And I was insanely proud of this guy, Fred, who was managing the account. He walked right into the punch. I didn't even have to ask him to. He walked right into the punch, earned his cred with the client. And the whole thing went away because Fred walked into it, and he made good with the client. He walked into the punch. He said, I took my lumps. He said, I had to do it because it was the right thing to do. And I said, and that's really what it is. It amounts to it's doing the right thing by the client yourself without, I'm in marketing. So sometimes you're trying to look for the silver lining in the data. But listen, if none of the data presents a silver lining, you got to tell the client it's raining.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think it's going to rain and there's a problem on the horizon, tell them about the issue. Even
absolutely, bring it up.
Solve it, 9 times out of 10. I'm always doing that.
Isn't that the old rule? Better to ask. What to say? It's. I'm thinking of the wrong word. I was going to say forgiveness versus permission, but that's not it. But it's the idea of getting out ahead of something. It's like if I tell the client, if I reach out a day before and say I'm not going to meet the deadline, the client's always forgiving. If I reach out a day after and say I'm sorry, I missed the deadline, the client's a little warm under the collar.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you actually then come in and you solve the problem and you actually deliver what you said you were going to deliver, it's like, okay, now at least you're showing the client that you're a problem solver.
Right.
So
get in and bring a solution.
I'm always try to get out in front of that stuff. In digital marketing, so many clients that I work with just hate their agency. They don't understand what they're spending. They don't understand what the ROI is. They feel like it's this black hole. What do you do differently?
So it's actually funny. This question is very well timed because we just went through and updated what we call our sales story. And in there, we all argue back and forth about what our key differentiators are. And there's three words that we added to a presentation a few months ago that seem to stick around, because they resonated really, really well with the client. It's transparency, trust, and experience. And we talk to those three things because there are 10,000 agencies that do what we do. So we've got to create a relationship from day one. We have to be problem solvers from day one. And I'm not talking day one after the client signs the paper, is that we have to be willing to solve problems during the pitch process, because a client wants to know how you think and what you're doing. So when I think about those three words, I think about transparency is that if you're going to spend $1 with BFO, I'm going to tell you where it goes and what it's spent on. I'm bent on this, and you can't do it everywhere. I'm bent on providing ROI. I separate metrics and KPIs very specifically. A metric is any number. The KPI is what makes dollars and cents for my clients. So I want separation between those numbers, and I will try and force to get to some KPI. Met with a client just a few weeks ago, and they really can only give us metrics because some of the finances are very deep and hard to get to. But I said, I want to be responsible for driving incremental revenue. How do we get there? And the client's open to it, and he likes the idea. And then when I think about trust, it's the idea that we have to earn it, right? And think about emotional intelligence. And think about this in the workplace. I think about first, it's respect, right? You're an agency. You've been around a while. You've won some awards. There's some respect. Now we get through the process. We have to earn your trust, and we keep it. And after that is when the client will make that emotional investment in BFO. And when we're there, now we have a strong relationship. I don't want to take advantage of that relationship. I don't want to take it for granted. I want to continue to deliver. So what we try to do is we use something we call goal therapy that we've developed internally. It's our way of helping clients sort of define their goals and objectives for the coming period, whether it's a year, a quarter, or a month, or even just a campaign. But it's the idea that everything we do ties into one of their goals. It makes communication easier. It makes reporting easier, and it makes difficult conversations easier, because we'll walk in with numbers, and if we said we were going to get to $3 and we got to $2, well, we're going to have to back that up. If we said we're going to get to $3 and we got to $5, well, we need another story that way. But either way, you've agreed on what you're reporting on, so there's never a question when you sit in the room. And then when I think about experience, it's funny, it's a blessing and a curse, because we tend to hire a lot of folks with great industry experience, with several years of experience or more, because we want seasoned people, because anybody can buy keywords. And I hate to say that, it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek remark, but the Google AdWords test is not difficult. It's a great sign if you've taken it, but because you've passed a Google AdWords test doesn't mean I should give you $50,000 a month in my budget to manage. You have to prove that you can think outside the box a little bit and what else you bring into the table. So I want people that have been around the block. Certainly I'm willing to train people, and that's fine, but you have to give me an aptitude, right? And I think it's said best when I think about three things. We think about Jim Collins. He says, who do you want to be on the bus with? And I think about people and how he hires, and I think about values, will, and skill. And for a while, we were just like everybody else, and we hired on skill. Once we back that up, and you asked the question earlier about hiring for emotional intelligence, is we start with values and will first, because we can teach some of the digital marketing. I want you to have some experience, but you've got to have the values and will that go along with that. And as Colin says, those are the people you want to be on the bus with.
We were talking earlier. You had asked a question of how it seems like I'm moving, getting things done here, there, and you asked how do I get everything done. So I'm going to switch that around. I'm going to actually ask you that question.
Oh, that's just mean. I'll try.
That's what the interviewer gets. It's like, all right, look.
That's right. You're the host for a reason.
7 years on the Inc. 5000 list. How'd you do it? How are you getting everything done? What are your secrets?
I'm going to go back to humans. I'm going to go back to the right people in the right seats. And I think about, and listen, there's plenty of times in the business I get in the way, and I try to stay out of the way. I try to let people think for themselves, and I try to let them make their mistakes. As I like to say it, I don't like seeing you bounce off of walls, but you need that to learn. And so when people come to me with questions over and over and over again, different questions, and they look like they're afraid to make decisions, I try to flip that, and I try to get them to make the decision, and I'll try to support it and validate it. And I won't say right or wrong. Now, if it's going to cost me if there's going to be, significant risk in clients or money, then I'm going to take it a little more seriously. But if it's just day-to-day problem solving, I don't want to be in everything, and I can't be in everything. And if you really want your business to grow, it's about empowering folks to be able to make those day-to-day decisions without thinking that you're going to usurp their authority, or you're going to come crashing down and say, why did you make that decision, Susie? I can't believe you said that to the client. And as a leader, even in times when you don't fully agree with an idea, if you walked out of the room and we all agreed on it, you jump up and down in public to support the idea. You're the biggest cheerleader. even if it wasn't your favorite idea walking out of the room, and people respond to that, and they grow with it. And I think giving people the autonomy to support the accounts the way they think is right, but putting guidelines or guide rails in place in order for them to manage those clients and accounts appropriately, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that sort of gets out and becomes your reputation. And if your reputation is like that, that you're delivering, that you build trust and you have great relationships with clients, then, they tell two friends, so to speak.
Yeah. Years ago, I implemented what's your idea? 3 things. And someone would come in and say, hey, what do you want to do here? You tell me. What are 3 things?
Yeah.
And, they come up with 1, then 2. It took a long time to train the team. But eventually they come up with 3. And the last question is, well, which one do you like? And they're like,
yeah,
I think we ought to do this one. Great. Go do it.
Yeah. Bring me your ideas.
Pretty soon they stop coming in because they know it's going to be, tell me the 3 things. Which one do you think? And then they just run with it.
I have a really bad habit of helping people solve their own problems.
Yeah,
they didn't know they had their answers. What is it? Seth Godin says something about, people come in your office with a monkey on their back and they want to put the monkey on your back. Yeah. And I used to believe that if you didn't have a solution, you shouldn't come to my office. But then I realized after it was years and a few conversations that guess what? Sometimes people just really don't have an answer and they want to talk it out. So while I won't let you put the monkey on my back, I'm happy to have that conversation so we together can arrive at your best answer. I may have a different answer that I would try, but you know what? Most of them are going to work. There's, how many different ways are there to solve a problem? You just got to go try. I call it make a decision and move on. My little acronym is MADMO. I don't put that anywhere. I just say, make a decision and move on. You'll find out if you're winning or losing. I met a great fellow, Pedro, I can't think of his last name, was in Singapore last year and was at a conference, and Pedro was a happy accident. I walked into his session, and his session happened to be all about growth hacking. And he asked me what the cycle was for change in operations in our business. And I said, well, generally we'll pick a project and we'll try and get something big done every 3 months. And he looked at me and he said, are you crazy? You can't get anything done in 3 months. And then we kept talking, and he said, you've got to know at least 8 or 10 things that you could fix in a few days. He said, make that list, prioritize that list. He says, make a change. If it works, make the next change. He goes, if it doesn't work, make the next change. And he says, just keep going. You'll eventually have made the big change and you won't even know it. And it's funny to say that Pedro changed my life that day, but he did, because I think about it differently. It's breaking things down into their core components and their pieces and saying, let's look at it differently. And in helping folks at BFO solve problems, it's about, where does the problem exist? Are you trying to, I put an article up on Forbes recently published, so don't worry about step 14, because we all think about way out there. It's like, no, you've got the first 3 or 4 steps defined. Go get those done, because guess what? Step 14 isn't going to be what you thought it was. And a great quote, I believe, I'm going to give credit to Mark Weishamp. Darn it, I'm screwing up names again. I won't give his name. Mark, I saw him at Inbound. I'll give you his name later. You can put a little thing at the bottom of it where credit's due. But he said, I can't even think of the quote. Thor, edit this piece for me, would you? Yes. It's something about, darn it, I had it earlier. Where are my notes? Where are my cue cards?
Tell you what, it's not going to get edited. I'm going to come back.
I know. You'll come back and I'll remember it later.
I'm going to give you my thoughts here because when you asked me the question. First of all, if you want to be more productive, stop doing stuff. Don't try to figure out how to be more productive. Figure out how to put a team around you that they can actually do the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing other things. When you're working out, listen to an audiobook. When you're driving, make the phone calls. Do 2 things at once. This is not multitasking, but if you have something that is just really basic that you're doing, doesn't require thought, do something else that you can fit in at the same time. And I hate to bust everybody's bubble here, but you can't do everything. You can't.
Amen.
You've got to make some choices of what you want, what's important. You've got to prioritize in every aspect of your life. You can have a lot, but you can't have everything. And I know how to say no. I say no to a lot of things. And then when I do say yes to it, I'm fully present. I'm not checking.
Right.
I'm not checking my phone. I'm not doing whatever it is. I was training for an Ironman. I did 2 in the last 30. I did 2 34 days apart, and I'd be at the pool. And there's people that are swimming laps in the pool, and they've got their iPhone in a plastic bag at the end of the pool. I was like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Crazy.
It's interesting. Your notes actually bring up, and I don't have written rules for some of this stuff, but being present is one of those things.
Yeah.
Don't overtask. Don't come into a meeting. Be present in the meeting. Try not to overtask. Be present for the people that are there in that meeting. I think it really, really goes a long way to creating good solutions and solving problems.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I had somebody on the podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and it was about how to make impact with your speech and communication. And he said, say less. We're trying to add different things. Go into a meeting and say very little, but what you do say, make it impactful. I remember the private equity guys I used to work with in New York. They'd go to a meeting. You didn't think they were paying attention. And then all of a sudden, they would come 2 or 3 things, and it was like, holy cow, that person was spot on.
Mm-hmm. Michael Hyatt, his leadership coach, says something, and I'm sure it's credited multiple people, but I'll give him credit here. He says, you can't learn with your mouth open.
Yeah.
And it is. You don't have to direct the conversation or be the center of attention. You just have to know exactly where to insert yourself and how to use the room.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader too, it's about being able to sit back or step back and wait for the room and let them solve some of the problems. If you have to guide a little bit and you have to, I call it, you can either lead with a torch or a 2x4. And with a torch means they're chasing you, they're going into war with you. With a 2x4, sometimes they need a little bit of a nudge from behind to go in and take the plunge. So either way, you can still be the guide, and nobody really gets hurt. And you're not controlling that to the nth degree. You're just you're helping the process along, and that goes so far.
Yeah. You're talking about instead of trying to solve that big issue, just attack it in small little increments. The Compound Effect. Great book. I forget who. I don't know. Forget the author.
It's back there somewhere.
Back there somewhere. Oh, there it is. Daryl Hardy. That's pretty good. I actually have about.
It's a cheat sheet. I don't have a cheat sheet back here. We won't talk about what's behind me.
Right there. You can see I have multiple copies of it because if you come visit, I actually hand those out. Like hey, nice to meet you.
You're a lot like me. I will grab 3 to 5 copies of every book that I appreciate. I'll read it first, and if I really like it, I will buy copies. So Brene Brown's recent book, Dare to Lead, because I'm a Brene Brown fan, I was walking through Barnes & Noble, and I saw it, and I grabbed 5 copies because I said, Brene's going to tell me some really amazing things in here, and I've got to get copies for some key people. So I just brought them back to the office and handed them out like candy.
Love it. Well, brother, we're at the end of our show. The electricity is still on. The internet is still working. The recording is still recording. I think we got this, except we have not told the audience how they can get in touch with the best digital marketing agency in the history of the world.
You have a couple of choices. You can hit me up on Twitter at Steve Krull, Krull. You can send me an email because I love responding to email. I love getting to know people. It's Steve at Be Found Online. That's BE Found Online. And then hit me up on LinkedIn. I love making connections on LinkedIn. I did something at DePaul University recently. I made all the students reach out on LinkedIn. I refused to give them business cards because I wanted to teach them how to network. So I got 30 connections from 100 students. I said, you guys did all right. That's a 30% conversion rate. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn.
That's terrific. Steve, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks for pushing through and making this thing work. I still owe you a beer when you come to Atlanta. So next time you're here, let me know.
I'm trying to make my way. I'm working things out with the client as we speak. So I will be back before you know it. We will have dinner and a drink, and I look forward to actually finally meeting you in person.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. Have a fabulous afternoon.
You too.
Bye.